The room went quiet for half a second. Not the comfortable kind of quiet. The kind where everyone hears something wrong, but waits to see who will react first. My nephew Jason slid his plate slightly closer to himself, looked directly at me, and said in a clear, confident voice, "Servants don't sit with us." He wasn't whispering. He wasn't joking. He said it the way children repeat rules they've already learned. Across the table, forks paused midair. My sister Amanda laughed, actually laughed. A soft, dismissive laugh like he'd said something adorable instead of humiliating. "Oh my God, Jason," she said lightly. "You can't say everything you hear." But she wasn't correcting him. She didn't sound embarrassed. She sounded amused. I felt every eye at the table move toward me. My brother-in-law kept cutting his steak, pretending not to notice. My mother stared into her water glass. My father cleared his throat but said nothing. The smell of roasted chicken suddenly felt heavy. The dining room was warm, crowded, familiar, the same Sunday dinners we'd had for years. And yet something had shifted. Jason looked confused that no one moved me, like the rule hadn't been enforced properly. He pointed at the side chair near the kitchen doorway. "That's where Maria sits," he added. "She helps, she doesn't eat here." Maria was their house cleaner. Amanda smiled at him proudly. Then she turned to me, still smiling. "You know kids," she said. I nodded slowly. I didn't stand up. I didn't defend myself. I just picked up my fork again. Inside, though, one thought landed quietly. Children don't invent hierarchy, they repeat it. And someone had taught him exactly where I belonged. I kept eating. That was the part everyone noticed later. Not anger, not tears, just calm. Because something about the moment didn't feel spontaneous. It felt practiced. Jason wasn't testing a boundary, he was enforcing one. And Amanda's laugh wasn't surprise. It was recognition. Like this conversation had already happened somewhere else, without me. Questions began stacking quietly in my mind. Why would a 7-year-old believe I was staff? Why didn't anyone correct him? And why did my sister look relieved that I stayed silent? I glanced around the table again. No one met my eyes, which told me something else. This wasn't the first time I'd been discussed when I wasn't in the room. Before I continue, I'm curious. Where are you watching from tonight? I always imagine these stories reaching people sitting in their kitchens, maybe late at night, maybe after a long day, just needing something honest to listen to. If you're new here, you can subscribe, not because of drama, but because sometimes hearing someone else's experience helps you recognize things in your own life sooner than I did. All right, let me explain why that sentence at dinner changed everything. My name is Marrianne. I was 32 at the time, and until that Sunday dinner, I genuinely believed my family saw me as dependable, not successful, not impressive, just reliable. I worked as an operations coordinator for a medical supply company, not glamorous but stable. I paid my bills. I owned a small townhouse. I lived quietly. Amanda, my older sister, was different. She had married well. Her husband Daniel ran a regional construction firm, and over the years their lifestyle expanded in visible ways. Larger house, private school for Jason, vacations that required passports and professional photography. Family gatherings slowly migrated to her home, not officially, just naturally. Her dining table seated 12. Mine seated 4. At first, I didn't notice the shift in roles. I arrived early to help cook. I stayed late to clean. I organized birthdays, bought coordinated gifts, remembered everyone's dietary restrictions. Amanda used to hug me and say, "I don't know what I'd do without you." And I believed it meant appreciation. Looking back, it meant utility. One afternoon months earlier, I was chopping vegetables beside her kitchen island. Amanda leaned against the counter, scrolling her phone. "You're honestly better at hosting than I am," she said. I laughed. "It's your house." "Yeah, but you make everything run." Daniel walked in, grabbing a drink. "She's basically our event manager," he joked. Amanda smiled. "Exactly." I remember smiling too, because at the time it sounded affectionate, not defining. Internally, I felt useful, needed. And after our parents retired and slowed down, I naturally filled gaps. If Mom needed groceries, I handled it. If Dad had appointments, I drove. If Amanda hosted holidays, I coordinated. No one assigned these roles. They just settled. and I never questioned them. I thought being the dependable one meant being loved. I didn't realize it sometimes means being taken for granted so gradually, you stop noticing the difference. The first strange moment happened 3 months before that dinner. Amanda hosted a fundraiser brunch for Daniel's business partners. I arrived early like always, but something felt off immediately. The kitchen counters were already arranged professionally, catering trays, labeled dishes, rented servingware. Amanda handed me an apron, not asked, handed. "Can you manage refills and clear plates?" she said quickly. I blinked. "Sure, but I thought we were hosting together." "Oh, I just need you floating," she replied. "You're good at that." Floating, I nodded. Guests arrived, people I didn't know. Every introduction sounded the same. "This is my sister Marrianne," Amanda would say. Pause, then add. "She helps me keep everything organized. Not works in healthcare logistics. Not my sister visiting. Just helps." One woman smiled at me warmly. "Oh, are you part of the staff?" Amanda laughed lightly. No, family," she said quickly, but then added, "She basically runs things, though." The woman nodded apologetically. I smiled politely. Inside, something tightened. I told myself I was being sensitive. Why did I feel smaller standing in my sister's kitchen? I pushed the thought away, because families fall into roles. That's normal. Over the next weeks, tiny moments accumulated, never big enough to confront, always easy to dismiss. Amanda called one Friday afternoon. "Hey, can you pick Jason up from school? Our driver canceled." I hesitated. "I'm still at work." "Oh, right," she said, surprised. "I forgot you were busy." Forgot. Like my job existed only when inconvenient. I rearranged my schedule anyway. Jason climbed into my car silently. Halfway home, he asked, "Do you work for Mom?" I laughed softly. "No, sweetheart. I'm your aunt." He frowned like that didn't answer the question. At my father's birthday dinner, Amanda handed me a wrapped box. "Can you give this to Dad when we sing?" she asked. "Why me? You're good at those moments." Again, utility. Again, subtle positioning. Confusion, right arrow, unease. I started noticing language. Patterns. How introductions framed me. How requests assumed availability. But nothing felt intentional enough to accuse, so I stayed quiet. The real change came when I stopped volunteering, just experimentally. One weekend, I arrived exactly on time instead of early. Amanda opened the door looking flustered. "Oh," she said. "You're just getting here?" "Yes," she glanced behind her. The kitchen was chaotic, unprepared, dinner late, guests uncomfortable. For the first time, she looked annoyed with me, not grateful, annoyed. That's when a realization flickered. The system worked only when I performed my role. And my role wasn't sister. It was support staff disguised as family. Driving home that night, I replayed small memories. Amanda introducing me differently depending on the audience. Daniel joking about my helpfulness. Jason asking if I worked for them. I wondered, had everyone slowly agreed on a version of me I never approved? And worse, had I helped build it? 2 weeks later, my mother mentioned something casually. "Amanda says you're wonderful helping around her house. She doesn't know how you find the time." Helping around her house. Not visiting, not spending time. Helping, the word echoed. I asked gently, "Did she say that?" Mom nodded. "She tells everyone how dependable you are." Everyone. Meaning this narrative existed beyond family dinners. It was public, established, and I hadn't noticed when it began. I called Amanda that evening. "Hey," I said lightly, "do people think I work for you?" She laughed immediately. "Oh my God, no, why would you think that?" Jason asked. "He's a kid." But where would he hear it? Pause, just long enough. "You're overthinking," she said finally. "You just help a lot." Something in her tone closed the conversation, not reassurance, dismissal. After that call, I began observing instead of participating. I arrived later, accepted fewer tasks, watched interactions carefully, and what I saw unsettled me. When I didn't automatically clear plates, Amanda subtly directed me. "Marrianne, could you grab those?" When guests asked where things were, she pointed at me instead of answering. When conversations turned professional, she excluded me gently. Not openly rude, just positioning. Over time, people stopped asking me questions about my life. They asked Amanda things through me. like I was an extension. Roles don't change overnight. They're reinforced repeatedly until everyone believes them, including the person trapped inside them. One evening, Jason ran past me carrying toys. He stopped suddenly, looked at me seriously. "Mom says you like helping because you don't have kids or a husband." The words landed softly, but heavily, not cruel, just repeated, learned. I smiled gently at him. "Your mom says that." He nodded casually and ran away. And in that moment, something finally aligned. The dinner comment wasn't random. It was the natural result of a story Amanda had been telling about me for years. I sat alone in my car afterward, hands still on the steering wheel, heart calm, mind clear. This wasn't accidental disrespect. It was identity reassignment. Amanda had slowly rewritten who I was within the family, not maliciously loud, strategically subtle. I wasn't the independent sister anymore. I was the helpful one, the available one, the one without obligations, the one who existed to support her life. And children always reveal the truth adults hide politely. Jason didn't insult me. He repeated hierarchy, which meant someone had taught him where I ranked. That Sunday dinner, the one where he told me servants don't sit with us, wasn't the beginning. It was the first time the invisible became visible. And as I sat there holding my fork, listening to Amanda laugh, I realized something quietly terrifying. She wasn't embarrassed. She thought the system was working perfectly. And for the first time in years, I decided to stop playing my role. Because what Amanda didn't know yet was that I had already started noticing things that didn't make sense. Financial things. Conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. And one small document I accidentally saw the week before. That changed how I understood everything. Right. After Jason said those words, after Amanda laughed, after everyone avoided looking at me, something inside me changed in a way that didn't feel emotional. It felt administrative, like a switch flipped from participating to observing. I finished dinner politely. I complimented the food. I hugged my parents goodbye. I even kissed Jason's forehead. Nothing dramatic. Because the most powerful moment of that night wasn't humiliation. It was clarity, and clarity makes people quiet. Driving home, I cried, though I didn't want to. That surprised me. My mind replayed one very specific memory from the week before. A document. Something small. Something I wasn't supposed to notice. The previous Thursday, Amanda had asked me to stop by her house while she was out. "Can you let the electrician in?" she'd said. "Just stay until he finishes." Normal request. I had keys. I'd done it dozens of times. The electrician arrived late, and while waiting, I sat at the kitchen island answering emails. That's when I noticed a folder left open beside Amanda's laptop. Not hidden, just unattended. At first, I ignored it. Then one page slid slightly when the air conditioner turned on. A heading caught my eye. Household expense allocation. I wasn't snooping. But my name was written halfway down the page, so I looked. My stomach didn't drop. It didn't spike. It went cold, because next to my name was a category labeled Support Contribution, Marrianne. Under it, Meal Preparation, Child Supervision, Event Coordination, Household Management Assistance, and beside each item, a monetary value. Not money paid to me, money saved because of me. Amanda had calculated what my unpaid help was worth. Thousands annually, documented, structured, intentional. I remember whispering aloud to an empty kitchen, "What is this?" I sat there debating. Maybe it's just budgeting. Maybe she tracks everything. But another column changed everything. Projected replacement cost if support removed. I stared at the number. It was higher than my annual salary. That's when understanding began forming. Amanda didn't just appreciate my help. She depended on it financially. My confusion was turning into recognition. The role she'd built for me wasn't accidental kindness. It was operational. After Sunday dinner, I stopped reacting emotionally and started collecting patterns. I didn't accuse. I didn't confront. I watched. And once you start watching people instead of trusting assumptions, you see everything differently. The following Wednesday, Amanda invited me for coffee, her tone overly warm. "Come by," she said. "I miss you." I arrived deliberately 10 minutes late. The house felt tense immediately, laundry stacked, kitchen unfinished. Jason's still in pajamas. Amanda looked relieved when I walked in. "Oh, good," she said quickly. "Can you keep an eye on Jason while I finish a call?" She didn't even ask how I was. I smiled gently. "I can stay for a little while." Her shoulders relaxed instantly, like a problem had been solved. Jason sat beside me coloring. "Aunt Marrianne?" "Yes. Mom says you always help because you have extra time." I paused. "Does she say that a lot?" He nodded. "She says you like being useful." Useful, not loved, not valued. Useful. Children expose narratives adults carefully soften. And suddenly I understood something deeper. Amanda wasn't trying to hurt me. She genuinely believed this was our natural dynamic, which meant confronting her emotionally wouldn't work. I needed facts. 2 days later, I attended a small gathering hosted by one of Amanda's friends, Claire. I almost didn't go, but something told me to observe Amanda in a space where she wasn't performing sisterhood. Claire greeted me warmly. "Oh, you're Amanda's assistant, right?" I blinked. "I'm her sister." Claire froze. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Amanda talks about how much you manage for her, so I assumed." She stopped, embarrassed. I smiled politely. But internally, a second realization locked into place. This story about me existed outside the family. Amanda had been introducing me as support staff socially. Consistently, repeatedly. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was branding. On the drive home, I asked myself a difficult question. Why would my sister minimize me publicly? Jealousy didn't fit. Cruelty didn't fit. Amanda wasn't a villain. She was practical, efficient, image-focused. Then another thought surfaced. What if lowering my status elevated hers? If I was the helper, she became the successful center everyone admired. And suddenly the document made sense. My unpaid labor supported not just her household, but her identity. A week later, our mother mentioned something casually again. "Amanda says she's overwhelmed managing everything." I nodded slowly. Mom continued, "She says you're basically part of her household." Part of her household, the phrasing stuck. So that night, I reviewed something I hadn't thought about in years: family finances. When our grandmother passed away, she left a modest trust divided between us. Amanda had insisted she manage logistics because she was better with numbers. I trusted her completely. I had never checked details. Until that night, I called casually. "Hey, quick question," I said. "Do you still oversee Grandma's trust paperwork?" "Yeah," Amanda answered quickly. "Why? I realized I never get statements." Pause. Just a second too long. "Oh, they come to my address," she said. "It's easier." "Easier? For who?" I asked gently. She laughed. "You know paperwork stresses you out." Another assumption about me, another role assignment. I smiled into the phone. "Can you forward them?" "Of course," she said, but her tone had changed. Careful, the statements didn't arrive. 2 days passed, then 4, then a week. Amanda texted. "Still waiting for the bank reply?" Something felt wrong. So I contacted the bank directly. And that's when the story shifted from emotional to undeniable. The representative verified my identity. "Yes, Miss Marrianne, you are listed as beneficiary." Relief, then confusion. "But the account shows regular administrative withdrawals authorized by your co-trustee." My chest tightened. "Co-trustee?" "Yes, Amanda Wilson." I swallowed. "What kind of withdrawals?" "Household management reimbursements." The phrase echoed like an alarm. Household management, the same wording from the document. I asked quietly, "Are those expenses shared equally?" "No," the representative said. "They're submitted under operational support services." I thanked her politely, hung up, sat completely still, because suddenly the hierarchy Jason repeated made horrifying sense. If I was categorized as support, Amanda could justify using shared family funds for household expenses tied to me. Not stealing, not illegally, but reclassifying reality. She had financially institutionalized my role as unpaid labor benefiting her household. Everything aligned at once. The introductions, the language, the document, the trust, withdrawals, Jason's belief, Amanda's laughter. She hadn't humiliated me at dinner. She'd revealed the structure she'd built over years, a system where I contributed effort. She received recognition, and shared resources quietly flowed toward maintaining her lifestyle, Not malicious theft, something more complex. Narrative manipulation backed by paperwork. Shock didn't come. Anger didn't come. Instead, calm. Because once you understand the system, you stop arguing emotionally. You prepare strategically. I didn't confront Amanda. I thanked her for dinner invitations. I continued visiting occasionally. But I stopped helping. Gradually, politely, I watched what happened. 2 Sundays later, "Can you come early?" she asked. "I'll arrive at dinner time," I replied. Pause. "Oh, okay." That night dinner started late. Amanda looked exhausted. Guests waited awkwardly. She kept glancing at me, waiting for me to step in. I didn't. And for the first time, I saw stress replace confidence in her expression. When you remove unpaid labor, systems reveal their true dependency. Friends began asking Amanda why events felt disorganized lately. Daniel looked irritated more often. Jason complained dinner wasn't ready on time. And Amanda began calling me more frequently. Her tone softer, almost pleading. "I miss spending time together," she said one evening. But what she meant was, "I miss the stability you provided." I wasn't seeking revenge. I wanted truth. And truth requires evidence people cannot dismiss as emotion. So I gathered documentation quietly. Trust statements, expense classifications, emails introducing me as household help, guest messages thanking me for working events. Each piece alone meant little. Together, they told a story. 2 weeks later, Amanda announced something at Sunday dinner, something unexpected, something public. She raised her glass and said, "We have exciting news about expanding the house." Everyone applauded. But when she explained how they were funding the renovation, I felt my pulse slow. Because she proudly credited a financial structure that included family support contributions. And suddenly I realized she was about to formalize the system permanently, using money that partly belonged to me in front of everyone, without thinking I understood. And that's when I knew exactly when the truth would come out, not privately, not emotionally, but at the next Sunday dinner, in front of the same table where I had been called a servant. After discovering the trust withdrawals, I didn't explode. I didn't accuse. I simply changed. And apparently that frightened Amanda more than anger ever would have, because anger she knew how to manage. Silence. Silence meant uncertainty. 3 days after the renovation announcement, Amanda called, her voice unusually gentle. "Hey, you've been distant lately." "I've just been busy," I said. A pause, then carefully, "You're not upset about anything, right?" There it was. Not concern, monitoring. "I'm fine," I replied calmly. "You know you can tell me if something's wrong," she said quickly. "I know." Another pause, then she added lightly, "I just don't want weird tension in the family." Not between us. In the family, meaning my feelings were already framed as disruption. I smiled even though she couldn't see it. "I'd never cause tension." Her exhale was audible, relief. She thought reassurance meant compliance. Amanda wasn't worried about hurting me. She was worried about losing control of the narrative. A week later, Amanda asked if I could attend Jason's school showcase. "Daniel's traveling," she said. "Jason wants family there." I agreed. I genuinely loved Jason, and part of me still hoped things were misunderstandings. The school auditorium buzzed with parents. I arrived early, sitting near the front. Jason spotted me and ran over. "Aunt Marrianne." He hugged me tightly. For a moment, everything felt normal again. Then Amanda arrived with 2 other mothers. She waved toward me casually. "This is Marrianne," she said. One woman smiled politely. "Oh, are you the nanny you told us about?" Amanda froze for half a second, then laughed. No, she's my sister." But she didn't correct the implication. She added, "She helps us a lot, though." The women nodded knowingly. One said warmly, "You must be a lifesaver." I smiled, but something inside me cracked quietly. Jason tugged Amanda's sleeve. "Mom, Aunt Marrianne sits with the helpers, right?" Amanda chuckled nervously. "Jason," she interrupted, "but she helps like Maria." Jason said. The mothers laughed awkwardly. Amanda leaned down and whispered, "Not now." Not "that's wrong," not "don't say that," just "not now." I felt myself shrinking in a room full of strangers who now viewed me through Amanda's lens. I stayed through the performance, clapped loudly, took pictures, because leaving would confirm the role she'd created, sensitive, dramatic. difficult. Humiliation is rarely loud. It's the accumulation of moments where defending yourself feels socially inappropriate. That Sunday dinner, Amanda greeted me at the door holding an apron. Not joking, not symbolic, literal. "Oh, good," she said brightly. "Can you help finish plating? I'm overwhelmed." Guests were already seated. She handed it to me in front of everyone. Daniel barely looked up. My father avoided eye contact. No one questioned it. Because the role had normalized, I held the apron for a long moment, then slowly placed it on the counter. "I'll join everyone first," I said gently. Amanda's smile tightened. "Of course," she replied quickly, but irritation flashed across her face. Halfway through dinner, "Marrianne, could you grab more water?" Amanda asked. "I think the kitchen's closest to you," I replied softly. Silence spread. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Amanda laughed too loudly. "Someone's feeling fancy tonight?" The table chuckled, but it wasn't friendly laughter. It was corrective laughter. A social signal, return to your role. Jason watched carefully, then said, "Mom says Aunt Marrianne helps because she doesn't have important work." The words hit harder this time, because they were clearer, more specific, learned language. Amanda quickly said, "Jason, eat your food." Still no correction. Still no defense. For the first time, I felt something close to rage, not explosive, focused. Later that night, Amanda cornered me in the kitchen, her voice low. "What's going on with you?" "Nothing. You're acting different." I nodded. "I am." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You know people notice when you pull away." There it was again, not concern. Image management, Amanda. "Did someone say something to you?" Me, "No." Amanda. "Because I'd hate for misunderstandings to grow." Me, "What misunderstanding?" Amanda. "That you're underappreciated." The word hung between us. She knew, she absolutely knew. I asked quietly, "Do you think I'm appreciated?" She laughed softly. "Of course, we rely on you." Rely, not value, not respect. Dependence disguised as affection. Amanda wasn't denying the hierarchy. She was justifying it. A few days later, Amanda invited me to lunch with her friends again. This time, I watched carefully. The conversation turned to careers. One woman asked me, "What do you do?" Before I could answer, Amanda jumped in. "She works in administration, very flexible schedule." Flexible, minimized, simplified. I added calmly, "I manage operations for a medical supply company." The table shifted slightly. Amanda quickly redirected conversation. Later she whispered, "You don't need to sound defensive." Defensive. For stating my job. She wasn't accidentally diminishing me. She was maintaining narrative dominance. Jason began mirroring behavior more openly. One afternoon he handed me his backpack. "Can you carry this? Mom says you're good at helping." Children aren't cruel intentionally. They reflect systems. I knelt beside him gently. "Jason, I'm your aunt, not your helper." He frowned, genuinely confused. "But Mom says everyone has jobs." And mine had been defined for him. Amanda called that evening unusually serious. "Have I upset you?" "I'm just thinking about things," I said. She lowered her voice. "I hope you're not interpreting things wrong. Families support each other." Support. Another reframing. Then she added carefully, "You know the renovation depends on stability right now." My chest tightened. There it was. A subtle warning. My behavior affected her plans, her finances, her image. Amanda sensed the shift, and she was trying to pull me back into position before I acted. Which confirmed one thing, she knew exactly what she'd built. The breaking point didn't happen during a fight. It happened during something small, ordinary, painfully quiet. Another Sunday dinner, another crowded table, another moment where I almost ignored it. Jason reached across the table and moved my plate slightly away from the center. "Mom says guests sit here," he explained, then pointed again toward the side chair. "The helpers sit there." Amanda froze. Everyone watched her. For the first time, she looked nervous, because now she sensed something different in me. I didn't smile. I didn't pretend. I simply asked calmly, "Amanda, is that true?" The room held its breath. Amanda laughed weakly. "Jason doesn't understand adult conversations." I nodded slowly. "But he learned it somewhere." Silence deepened. No one spoke. And for the first time, I didn't rescue her from discomfort. I let it exist. And I finally understood something essential. Amanda's power depended entirely on my cooperation. The moment I stopped protecting her narrative, the system would collapse on its own. Because what Amanda still didn't know was that I had already scheduled a meeting with the trust administrator. And by the next Sunday dinner, every document she relied on to keep me small would be sitting in my bag. Ready. Not for revenge, for truth. The Sunday that changed everything, I arrived 10 minutes early. Not to help, not to prepare, not to fix anything. Just to arrive as a guest. For the first time in years, I carried nothing in my hands. No dessert, no extra groceries, no backup dishes Amanda had texted me to bring, just my purse. And inside it, a folder. Thin, quiet, heavy enough to end a story that had been running for years. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I felt strangely peaceful, because tonight wasn't about proving my worth. It was about ending permission. Amanda opened the door. Her smile appeared instantly bright, rehearsed. "Oh, good, you're early," she said automatically. "We still need," she stopped, realizing I was standing there empty-handed. No casserole, no wine, no apron-ready posture, just me. Her eyes flickered. Adjustment mode activated. "That's okay," she recovered quickly. "Come in." The house looked different when I wasn't working inside it. I noticed things I'd never allowed myself to notice. Unfinished decorations, cluttered counters, stress in Amanda's movements, Daniel rushing between rooms without my invisible labor. The illusion of effortless perfection had cracks. And everyone felt it. Amanda followed me into the kitchen, lower voice. "Hey, could you help plate the salad before people arrive?" I met her eyes calmly. "No," not harsh, not emotional, just clear. Her face froze. "No, I'm here for dinner." Silence stretched between us. Amanda laughed lightly. "Oh, of course, I just thought, I know what you thought." Her smile tightened. For the first time, she didn't know how to reposition me. A boundary had finally been spoken, and nothing exploded. The world didn't collapse, which made it powerful. Family filtered in. My parents, 2 neighbors, Amanda's friends. Everyone unconsciously scanned the room the way people do when routines change. Something felt off because I wasn't moving constantly. I sat and waited. Jason ran toward me. "Aunt Marrianne," he hugged me tightly, then asked loudly, "Are you helping today?" The room quieted slightly. I smiled gently. "No, sweetheart, I'm just visiting." He looked confused. "But Mom said," Amanda interrupted quickly. "Jason, go wash your hands." Too fast, too controlled. People noticed. Dinner began. Amanda placed dishes on the table hurriedly, slightly disorganized. Halfway through serving, she turned toward me instinctively. "Marrianne, can you?" She stopped herself. The habit was automatic. The room noticed again. And then Jason said it, the line that ended everything. He pointed toward the side chair. "Servants sit there." A few guests laughed nervously. Someone muttered, "Kids say anything." Amanda forced a smile, but this time I didn't protect her. I set my fork down calmly, looked directly at Amanda, and said gently, "No, that stops tonight." The words weren't loud, but they carried. Conversation died instantly. Amanda blinked. "What do you mean?" I took a breath, not dramatic. Grounded. "I mean, I'm not your helper, I'm not household support, and I'm definitely not a servant." Silence wrapped around the table. No yelling, no accusations. Just truth spoken out loud for the first time. I opened my purse. Placed the folder carefully on the table, not aggressively, just visibly. "I didn't understand at first," I continued calmly. "I thought I was imagining things." Amanda's posture stiffened. "Marrianne, maybe we shouldn't." "I agree," I said softly. "We shouldn't have needed this conversation." Then I slid the first document forward. "This," I said, "is a household expense report listing my unpaid work as operational support." Guests leaned closer. My father frowned. Amanda's color drained. "It's just budgeting," she said quickly. I nodded. "Yes, budgeting that assigns monetary value to my labor while labeling me as support staff." I placed another paper down. "And this is the family trust statement." Daniel straightened suddenly. Amanda whispered sharply, "Marrianne," but I continued calmly. "These withdrawals were categorized as household management reimbursements connected to my role." Gasps. Realization spreading slowly. Not explosive, heavy because she wasn't attacking, she was explaining. Mom spoke first. "Amanda, what is she talking about?" Amanda swallowed. "It's not what it sounds like." I nodded gently. "You're right. It isn't theft, it's classification." Everyone listened. "You built a system where my unpaid help financially supported your household, and socially, I was introduced as assistance, so it made sense." No anger, just clarity. Daniel looked stunned. "You told people she was staff." Amanda shook her head quickly. "I never meant it like that," Jason interrupted softly. "But you said she helps because she doesn't have important work." The room froze again. Children revealed truths adults hide. Amanda's eyes filled with panic. I leaned back slightly. Calm, centered. "I helped because I loved you," I said quietly. "But love isn't supposed to shrink someone." No accusation, just boundary. "And tonight I'm choosing something different." I closed the folder. "I won't be part of this role anymore." No screaming, no revenge speech, just a clear, undeniable no. Amanda's voice cracked. "I didn't realize you felt this way." For the first time, she sounded small, not powerful, not composed, just exposed. I answered honestly. "I don't think you noticed because the system worked for you." Tears filled her eyes. Daniel looked between us, processing years differently. My father whispered, "We all let this happen." And that was the true exposure, not Amanda alone, the family dynamic itself. No one returned to eating immediately. People shifted seats unconsciously. Someone passed me water instead of asking me to get it. A small action, but symbolic. Roles were resetting in real time. Jason climbed into my lap quietly. "Are you still my aunt?" I kissed his forehead. "Always." Not helper, not servant. Aunt, family, equal. Dinner ended early, no dramatic exits, just heavy reflection. Amanda walked me to the door, her voice soft. "I never wanted to hurt you." I believed her, but intention didn't erase impact. "I know," I said gently, "but I needed you to see me." She nodded slowly. For the first time, she looked uncertain without control. Life became quieter, healthier. I stopped organizing family events. Amanda hired actual help. The renovations scaled down. Trust finances were reassigned equally. And something unexpected happened. Our relationship slowly rebuilt without hierarchy. Visits shorter but genuine. Respect replaced dependence. I still go to Sunday dinners sometimes. Now I arrive when everyone else does. I sit wherever I want. And no one hands me an apron. Jason once asked me recently, "Why don't you help anymore?" I smiled and told him, "Because helping should always be a choice." He nodded thoughtfully, and Amanda didn't laugh, so I want to ask you, was Amanda intentionally wrong, or just comfortable with a system that benefited her? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe for more.